Imagine the absolute absence of light, not the dim glow of a street lamp through a curtain or the standby LED on a television, but a darkness so thick and heavy it feels like a physical weight pressing against your eyes. You are standing in the middle of a vast open savanna. There is no moon tonight. You cannot see your own hand held 3 inches from your face. Every rustle in the tall grass sounds like a footstep. Every snap of a dry twig is a heart attack-inducing crack of thunder. You have no phone to illuminate the shadows, no flashlight to pierce the gloom, and no walls to protect you from what is breathing just beyond the reach of your campfire's dying embers. In this void, you aren't the apex predator. You are a target. This was the nightly reality for our ancestors for millions of years. It wasn't just a period of rest. It was a 12-hour gauntlet of survival, social engineering, and psychological transformation. What do you actually do for half your life when the sun goes down and the world turns lethal? The answer is far more complex than just lying down and closing your eyes. In fact, the way ancient humans handled the night is the very reason our brains evolved the way they did, and the secrets of their nocturnal lives are written in our DNA today. The answer to how they spent those dark hours changed everything we thought we knew about human sleep and the birth of human culture. Most people assume that before Thomas Edison came along and ruined our circadian rhythms with the light bulb, humans simply followed the sun. We assume they worked until dusk, crawled into a cave, and slept a solid, unbroken 12 hours until the birds chirped. It's a logical guess, but it's completely wrong. We know this because of groundbreaking research into modern hunter-gatherer societies and a wealth of archaeological evidence that reveals a much more vibrant, active, and sometimes terrifying prehistoric lifestyle. They didn't just sleep, they lived a second life under the stars. Over the next few minutes, we are going to explore the original nightlife. We're going to look at the transformative power of the fire, the truth about ancient sexual habits, the strange phenomenon of first sleep, and the constant creeping threat of the predators that owned the dark. We'll see how the night was actually a classroom for the soul, a theater for the mind, and a battlefield for survival. By the end, you'll realize that your own struggle with insomnia or midnight snacking isn't a modern glitch. It's a prehistoric legacy. The real shift in ancient human evolution began the moment we tamed fire. Before fire, the night was a dead zone, a time of forced inactivity and high risk. But fire changed our biology and our social structure. It extended the usable hours of the day, but more importantly, it changed the quality of those hours. During the day, ancient humans were focused on the how of survival. How do we track this antelope? How do we find water? How do we avoid that storm? The daytime talk was practical, tactical, and functional. But when the sun went down and the fire was lit, the conversation shifted. Researcher Polly Wiesner spent decades studying the Jew Huansi people of southern Africa, and her findings were revolutionary. She discovered that daytime talk was almost entirely about work and gossip, but nighttime talk was 80% storytelling. Firelight triggers a specific narrative brain mode. When you can only see the faces of the people around the flickering flames and the rest of the world is swallowed by shadows, the human brain seeks to fill that void with imagination. This is where myths were born. This is where history was passed down. The night was a classroom where the elders taught the young not how to hunt, but why they hunted. They used the darkness to build a shared mental world. This social bonding wasn't just a pastime, it was a survival strategy. Groups that told stories together stayed together. They resolved conflicts, performed grooming rituals to strengthen ties, and engaged in matchmaking that would ensure the next generation. Fire didn't just cook our food, it cooked our culture, but fire could only do so much. Eventually, the stories would fade, the embers would dim, and the group would have to face the most misunderstood aspect of ancient life: sleep. If you think the 8-hour sleep is natural, think again. Historian Roger Eckerk and various sleep scientists have found overwhelming evidence that ancient humans practiced what is known as biphasic sleep. They didn't sleep in one big chunk. Instead, they would fall asleep shortly after dusk for about 4 hours. This was the first sleep. Then, around midnight or 1 in the morning, the entire camp would wake up. For 2 to 3 hours, they would be active in the dead of night. This wasn't a mistake or a case of mass insomnia. It was a programmed biological window. During this midnight watch, the atmosphere was profoundly different. It was a time for quiet reflection, prayer, and intimate conversation. It was also the primary time for sex. In the privacy of the dark, away from the prying eyes of the daytime tribe, couples would bond. Others would use this time to interpret their dreams, which were seen as direct messages from the spirit world or the ancestors. This gap between sleeps was a period of high creativity and spiritual connection. Then they would drift back into a second sleep until dawn. This explains why so many people today wake up at 3 a.m. and feel anxious. Your body is looking for the watch, but your modern life has no place for it. The watch served another purpose: security. Ancient humans couldn't afford to have everyone unconscious at the same time. While some slept, others would tend the fire or listen to the wind. They lived in a world where the night belonged to the night shift of the animal kingdom. We're talking about 600-pound saber-toothed cats, hyena packs that could crush bone like crackers, and leopards that were specialized in dragging primates out of trees in the pitch black. The fear of the dark isn't a childish phobia, it is a finely tuned evolutionary survival mechanism. To an ancient human, the dark was a gauntlet. Every night was a gamble. Archaeological sites have found the remains of early humans with puncture marks in their skulls that perfectly match the canine teeth of large felines. We weren't just sleeping, we were hiding. This constant pressure shaped our psychology. It created the concept of monsters, the idea that there are things in the dark that want to eat us. Early religions and rituals often centered around surviving the night. Protective amulets have been found in ancient burial sites, placed there to guard the soul during the long night of death, mirroring the protection needed during the literal night. We built fire pits at the perimeters of our camps, creating a barrier of light that acted as a psychological and physical shield. Dawn felt like a rebirth because the night was so tense. We take the sunrise for granted because we can turn on a light at 2 a.m., yet our forefathers celebrated the first golden rays of daylight over the horizon. It means you survived another 12 hours of predator rule. This cycle of overnight dread and morning relief ingrained a love of life. Every day felt deserved. One nighttime activity that distinguishes the archaic experience more than fire or predators is almost entirely vanished in the modern world. There was quiet, total, profound quiet. Without electricity, engines, or smartphone pings, the ancient night was sensory deprivation beyond our imagination. Silence incited introspection. It enabled consciousness and self-awareness that is practically unattainable today. The human eye was discovered during the night. That silence turned prehistoric survival into reflection. They stared at the stars, which were infinitely brighter without light pollution, and posed the first inquiries about our origins and purpose. Night affected our consciousness more than day. Daytime was for the body, nighttime for the intellect. Tonight, when you check your phone in bed, you're replacing myths, dreams, and the crackle of a fire. A system created over millions of years to balance social, spiritual, and primordial is being overthrown. Our predecessors had little, but they had a connection to the universe's rhythm we've lost for convenience. How often have you sat in the dark with no screen, no noise, and just your thoughts? LEDs and neon have illuminated the dark, but we may have lost what made us human. The night was when we became who we were, not just survived. Stop lighting up the world and accept the dark for a while to grasp your mind's deep origins. Look at how our bodies are still wired for the prehistoric world to understand how these ancient survival tactics affect your health today.